Well, General Carston Jacobson is a spokesman for NATO forces inside Afghanistan. He joins me now live from Kabul. Thanks so much for being with us. I guess the question on the minds of many, General, is how could such practices as ripping toenails out of people and twisting their genitals be carried out in a country that international forces like yours are heavily invested in helping and trying to rebuild?
Well, we were aware of the United Nations report coming up for about 4 weeks. Already in July, in the south of Afghanistan, transfer of detainees that were taken in combined operations had been stopped because we had reason to believe that they would be inhumanely treated. When we heard about the coming report, we worked very closely together with the United Nations mission and with the government of Afghanistan, who has, as the report also highlights, been very cooperative in this matter. So we are seeing systemic mistreatment in some institutions, but it is limited to some institutions where detainees were mistreated.
Sorry, sir, you're really not answering my question, though, which is, how could this level of torture be carried out when international forces like yours are heavily invested in rebuilding the country?
Well, it happened in prison installations of the National Security Service and of the Ministry of the Interior. As soon as we found out about any details and along the process in the making of this report, we immediately stopped transfer of detainees into these installations. There is a very clear process installed which starts with inspections of these installations, then goes over retraining of the personnel.
Until July, you had no idea that torture was being carried out in Afghanistan? Is that what you're telling me?
I am saying to you that we stopped transfer of detainees as soon as we found out in individual institutions where there was mistreatment. We did that already in July. We extended that program as soon as we worked together with UNAMA and with the government of Afghanistan. We first expanded it to 8 installations. We have at the moment suspended the transfer of detainees to 16 installations, and we will continue to work with the government of Afghanistan and with UNAMA on this matter.
Sir, the UN report says it has evidence from 22 people it has interviewed that they were transferred from the custody of foreign military forces to local security and they had been tortured. Did you not know at the time you were transferring people to local Afghan forces that torture was being carried out in Afghanistan?
As it is not systemic in the Afghan prison service, but systemic in individual installations, this is the case. We have transferred, to our knowledge, out of the 379 who were questioned, 19 that were handed over to the Afghan services who came out in the investigations. Now, we have stopped immediately.
If it's a matter of numbers, I'll go with your number, 19. I mean, I just find it surprising. Many people know that torture has been documented in Afghanistan since the days of Baba Karmal. Are you saying that when you handed over, whether it was 22 or 19, you had no idea that torture was being carried out in Afghan security forces?
We very carefully investigate the installations, and it is the individual installation where we have to find out whether torture is happening there. As we are transferring responsibility to the Afghan authorities, we have to trust in cooperation with the Afghan authorities, and literally that is what the UNAMA report quite clearly says. It actually highlights the support that the Afghan government is given to the process.
So are you saying that because you feel you have to trust and cooperate with Afghan forces, does that make you to overlook torture when you were handing over suspects prior to July?
Trust comes along with control, and that is exactly the process that we are doing. We are investigating into the installations, we are retraining when it is necessary, we are certifying before we are taking up again the process of handing prisoners. It hasn't happened so far. In the installations where we stopped the transfer of detainees, we haven't taken it up again because we are not through the process. We will support in accountability where we have to, and we will make sure that this is a very visible process observed by the public.
So I really feel you're not answering the question I've asked you. You've explained very clearly that you're looking into things and trying to fix the situation. But the real question is, when you've been handing over suspects to Afghan forces, did you have no idea torture was being carried out?
We knew that there were certain installations in which mistreatment was happening, and that is why we already in July, long before the UNAMA report, stopped the transfer of detainees to certain facilities down in the south. In very close cooperation with UNAMA and the government of Afghanistan, we have stopped since then, in altogether 16 installations, the transfer of detainees.
So if you knew that mistreatment occurred in some prisons and some facilities, how did you go on transferring suspects?
Well, not the entire prison system of Afghanistan is under suspicion. And it is very clear this is individual facilities in which this mistreatment happened there systemically, as the report highlights. But it is not the entire Afghan prison system in which this mistreatment happens. So therefore we are looking at the individual installations, and we are then taking very clear steps as the Geneva Convention demands.
Do you think that international forces then bear some responsibility, at least some negligence, if, in your own words, you knew that torture was being carried out in some facilities while you were transferring suspects to them?
As I've just explained to you, as soon as we got any information that in a particular installation mistreatment was happening, we immediately stopped the transfer of detainees to those facilities. We immediately initiated the 6-step process that I've highlighted to you earlier. So there is, on the side of the international force, where the only thing in question is whether we transfer detainees into the hands of the Afghan authorities or not, every step was taken timely, quickly, rapidly, and everything that we had to do to support the real findings and to come over this problem, we have done.
According to the UN report, not quick enough for 22 people it spoke to. There's plenty more questions, but we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, General Jacobson.